Hello and welcome to EEXSport Talk. I am your host, Gift C. Enyadike Jr., back again with my father, veteran journalist, sports analyst, and businessman, Emeka Enyadike. The round of 32 is officially behind us. The round of 16 is here. FIFA World Cup, we've lost about half the field now. Now it's down to the best of the best. But we got to look back a little bit, We've had heartbreak, we've had upsets, we've had extra time drama, and just, of course, incredible football. But before we get into it, please, if you enjoy these conversations, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment as well telling us who you think will lift the trophy. Dad, let's look back, round of 32. It completed this morning. What's your biggest takeaway? Has anything changed your opinions or also just like overall, just a general gist of the round of 32? What are you thinking?
I think for me, the format of the World Cup, the group stages seemed more like the teams were warming up. We had some really interesting matches, a lot of surprises, a lot of intrigues trying to work around. You got points, you got games, how you have to navigate, what kind of points you need to scale through to the next round, and all of those kind of things. But the round of 32 for a lot of teams, it was a whole different experience because now you know that these are games that you have to survive. It was all or nothing. For teams that never been in the knockout stage, it was challenging. What was surprising for me, not so surprised, what was exciting for me is the fact that so many games were decided very late. So some games either had very late goals where one team brings a surprise, or you had a scenario where games went into extra time from very unlikely teams that you wouldn't think will get there. And then, of course, there were a lot of games that tested the superpower. So you had mostly the games involving African teams. They scored first.
We'll get into that one a bit later.
Yeah, I'm just saying, they led, and then you had suddenly you have this scenario where some late games. So I think it was the World Cup came alive with this rounds, and probably justification for the expansion. It shows that more and more nations can compete in the World Cup.
Absolutely. We got to talk about, like you mentioned, teams that have never been in the knockouts. We have to talk about a team that's previously never been in the World Cup, the one that we've been hyping up for a long time. That is, of course, Cabo Verde. Last episode, I thought Cape Verde could reach the round of 16, depending on who they were facing. Unfortunately, the who in that situation was Argentina. However, we have got to give Cape Verde their props. They came in and they fought. They pushed Argentina are the world champions. They came in and they pushed them all the way to extra time, and they went out because of an unfortunate own goal by defender Dini. That's about as cruel as football can get. It's just one of those things where it's like just that one mistake can just ruin everything. But even though they're out. Does this tournament change how people should view Cape Verde as a football nation going forward? Like, are they a team to be watching? Whether it's AFCON, whether it's the World Cup, whether it's anything else, any other big football showcase.
If you remember what I said the last time, I said, Cape Verde doesn't surprise me at all. I followed them from their emergence just before the AFCON in 2013. They have, and then of course I eventually went to visit them and spent the better of 10 days in between two trips. Cape Verde is organized. They have a very large diaspora community. They're a very proud country with deep African roots and strong, solid European, roots as well, because the Portuguese have been there for well over 400 years. They have been well tutored in terms of how they put their structure, and they've used their FIFA funding properly. Pure administrative structures, good organization, technical centers, small stadium that they've done there, but they've done their recruitment very well, and they're coached by a very coach. They haven't brought in someone from outside, and they from when they went to AFCON in 2013 in South Africa, and they drew 0-0 with South Africa in the opening game. They stopped Cameroon. They drew Nigeria in a friendly game. They've just been a difficult team to break down, a difficult team to beat. And
Defensively,
but
especially.
against Argentina, they showed that their game against Spain and Uruguay. And I remember listening to the pundits before the game, and someone was saying something like they played against Spain, they didn't have Lamine Yamal and all of those kind of things. These guys held Argentina. But at a point in that game, early in the game, it was difficult for Argentina to break them. And I think it
Yeah.
took just the special skills of Messi for Argentina to get that goal, because one, the pass from Martinez I think, it was Martinez to pass. Messi controlled it like he normally does under
Yeah.
all kinds of pressure while running, and then flipped it over the keeper just instinctively. That's what was needed. That first goal wasn't want any of the other goals, and there could be questions about the second goal and all of those kind of things, but they fought in this thing. They fought, they played. They were not scared of anyone.
They were
And
not.
for what
And the
is
goal for
probably
you talk about you talk about the goal from Messi. A lesser team would have gotten that goal from Messi, and they might have crumbled a bit, especially one as inexperienced, if I want to use that term, playing at this level, playing at the biggest tournament in the world. But no, they did not. They did not let that break them. They kept fighting. They kept it down, and they again, like I said, it was a mistake at the end, but it really was an incredible game, and it's one of those fascinating, like those crazy thoughts to me this morning when I saw it. I was like, Cape Verde could have eliminated Argentina. There's a chance that they could have taken the world champions out of this, however small it might have been. It's
absolutely, they had everything, and they showed that they're not to be underrated. I'm going to sound a warning here to everyone else who's trying to look down on them. They're going to get stronger. There's some players that most people don't know have roots in Cape Verde. I mean, Man United Portugal star who had roots in Cape Verde. Even Cristiano Ronaldo has a bit of ancestral roots there.
I didn't know
These
that.
these guys have a great contingent of diaspora. There's one country that has, Cape Verde probably has like 500,000 people living in Cape Verde, these islands, and they have maybe like another 2 million or thereabout, or 1 point something million people, or 1 million people living, or whatever number, living in Europe and America, everywhere. So they are going to choose Cape Verde going forward, knowing what these guys have done, and they're going to get very much stronger because they don't have what most African countries have. They are very organized. They have a good FA structure. They have proper organization, look after the guys, and then they've got a passion for their country that you wouldn't find with a lot of countries. These guys, no matter where they're born, they keep their identity and they will want to play. I mean, Joseph Fernandez, who's a director at FIFA, played for Switzerland, actually scored for them in the World Cup and played for all the big clubs. He's Cape Verde. Could have played for Cape Verde if it was now. So you have to look at the kind of quality that they could potentially bring to future tournaments and how they just cannot be overlooked. So they cannot be overlooked.
They
I'm really
cannot.
looking forward to seeing them at the next AFCON. I'm looking forward to seeing them qualify for the next World Cup, because they will. And we better watch out.
Yeah, I just for our sake hope that we aren't playing them in the qualifiers. Just
We played them.
just so,
We played them.
just so.
It was never recently after we played them. It wasn't easy over both legs.
I don't, after DR Congo, after what DR Congo did to us, can we just let's leave these underdog teams. Okay, let's actually get into the big competition for once, please. All right, let's leave those alone. But yeah, not to be overlooked, and we got to talk about just Africa as a whole, with the exception of Tunisia. But you're South Africa, Senegal, DR Congo, Ivory Coast, Ghana. These teams, and of course Cape Verde. These teams, they all came to play. Like, yes, SA, they fooled around a bit with the Mexico game, but after that they locked in. These teams, they came to play.
Yeah,
They came and they fought. They were leading in some cases, or they were at least holding their own. And the pattern across the board, round of 32, going back to South Africa versus Canada, all the way through, doing
yeah.
well,
Look,
and
every
then
African country,
yeah.
every
Sorry,
African
I was gonna
country
say,
at this World Cup.
I was gonna say, like, they're doing great, and then we get to like the final stretch. Those that near the final whistle, or we get into extra time in the case of Cape Verde and Argentina. But like in that final stretch, a late goal happens, a little bit of a mistake, one thing or another, or they make a team swap where some younger players come in and they're not. So I guess my question is just like, we've clearly taken so many steps forward, technically, tactically, everything. But then there's kind of just that last hurdle at the end. That's what I'm thinking. Yeah. Sorry, you were
We've been there. we've been there in the past before. I can go back. Cameroon in 1990, they led England, and England came back. The Cameroon game in 1990 and the game England versus England in 1990 and England versus DRC in this tournament, very identical. Took the special temperament of to step up and play 2 penalties, with which they won that game. Nigeria in 94 was the same team. The round of 16, we led Italy 1-0. 2 minutes to go, we lost concentration. They got an equalizer, and then Italy went to 10 men, but somehow they won a penalty in extra time and won the game. Then, of course, you have Ghana 2010, which was Luis Suarez handling the ball, and they got a penalty, which they missed, which they could have gotten. So you would expect that Africans will learn from all of those things and understand the need for concentration, preparation, and, intensity of the last few minutes. The one thing that kind of undid a lot of them was, I think they had the benefit of the hydration water breaks. And that's when the opponents go into, technical conversations that change the game. It's almost like in basketball,
I think
where you have
Mbappe,
timeouts.
I think Mbappe made a point about this very publicly. He said, like, don't ask players about hydration clicks because we're all very reactionary. So he says, like, if I'm getting crushed, then I'm gonna love a hydration break, right? Because then I can come back to it. But if I'm winning, I don't want to hear nothing about no hydration break, all right? Because I'm winning. I don't want the other team to come back. But I think Mbappe said people were like, doing like, oh, he's a dictator.
No, it's something that we have to work on going forward, because hydration breaks are not new. In the Olympics in Beijing, temperature was so high that we had hydration breaks. I remember Nigeria, Argentina in the final. So we have to understand that in games like basketball, you have scenarios where the coaches are allowed to call timeouts. In fact, there have been calls for us to have this introduced in football. They call timeouts when they know that they need to win something, or they need to get down. They need to orchestrate a particular play to get them back into contention. And so they use their timeouts to get their team together and organize how they will score a point or get a winning point. So these hydration breaks served some purposes, especially for the teams that were losing. And sometimes, certain decisions that are made towards the end. I watched Portugal versus Croatia, and in that game, Roberto Martinez took out Cristiano Ronaldo with 10 minutes to go, and he made some changes. Now the Croatians are having to play against Portugal because in their head, they will never imagine that Ronaldo will be substituted. And now Ronaldo is not on the field. They kind of lose concentration, and Ramos jumps to two or even bigger center backs and to head the equalizing goal that brought the winning goal, actually. And that game went on and on and on and on, and they managed to keep their shape. So it was a combination of the hydration breaks and the decisions that were made towards the end of the game, either substitutions or whatever. So when watching Senegal, game management was just poor. They had, the other African teams had 1 goal and couldn't keep them. Like Egypt had 1 goal. They couldn't keep it. They conceded. DRC had 1 goal and they didn't try to go and score another goal. But Senegal got a 2nd goal. The problem with having 2 goals is that when you concede 1, tendency for you to concede the 2nd one because then you have a lot of pressure. But when you score 2 goals, it gives you a lift, and you would expect that when the game is going to an end, you close several channels, and organize yourself in such a way you don't allow crosses in. There's so many things that you could see from this game. But, I'm not making excuses for them. I think they all did very well. And I think that, as always, if they have a plan, they can look at it and say, okay, look, this is how far we went. And you look at, I'll give 2 examples. So France didn't qualify for the World Cup in both 90 and 94. They set up a structure which is a French development platform in Clairefontaine. Yeah, that's where Thierry Henry and a lot of these young guys came through. And by 98, they had a team that they dropped some of their big star players, like Cantona, Ginola, Jean-Pierre Papin, and they won the World Cup with a team that had young players, Henry and the rest. And this team went on to win the Euros after that, and subsequently even led by Zidane, they got to another World Cup finals in 2006, which we all know how it ended in very, very funny factor. They only imploded by the time they got to 2010, because by then most of that team was aging. Germany also had a scenario where they had a whole bunch of young players in their team, the junior under 21 European Championship in 2009, and then that team but they started building it from 2006, and then by 2010 they got to semifinals, and by 2014 they won the World Cup in Brazil. Spain also had this whole building process that got them to winning in 2010, winning the Euros back to back 2008 and 2012. So there has to be some deliberate action that sees what they've achieved now as, a building block. And we saw with Morocco in the last World Cup where they built up all the way to semifinals. Yes, they removed their coach, but this coach that's with them now is the same coach who won the FIFA Under-20 World Cup with them. So Morocco they're on the right path. And who has impressed me is Egypt. How they kept their nerves in the penalty shootout. And, who knows, maybe the next round, Mo Salah decides to come to the party in the way, Mo Salah, or just like what Messi is doing for Argentina. There were fears that he might not play the last game because of injury fears and all that, but he played the entire game and still had the time to play cheeky penalty in the shootout. So Morocco and Egypt, they have structure. They have something that has worked for them, even at club level and at youth level and at national team level. They've been building something interesting. And Egypt has Usam Hassan, their greatest player, as a coach, him and his twin brother. And that it was so good to see both of them pulling the strings on the touchline. And what the decisions they made towards them, it was pretty impressive. For Congo, they also have a team that can be built on going forward. Ghana, they got Carlos Queiroz. And Queiroz is known as a very ultra-defensive coach, but they didn't concede much under him. Whether they will keep him on is something that I don't know. So it boils down to something I've been talking about for years, I've been writing about, which is the whole leadership. How we move these African teams to the next level is not down to the talent of the players, not even down to the coaches. It's more to the leadership. And how we can, something that I've also harped on earlier, is this tendency to change coaches all the time, because these are the moments where you get the teams needing to play the way they've been conditioned over the years, not something that they've only. Ghana had Carlos Queiroz for a few weeks. Even Morocco, the coach has just been there for a few weeks. So you have to have this long-term plan strategy where you can build something over time, and that's the only way we can crack this point. It's never a case of, okay, can an African team get to the semifinals? Morocco has done it. Can they get to quarterfinals? We've seen it several times. We've seen a team like Nigeria threatening in 1994. They could have gone all the way. So the point is simply that we're getting very close. Let's see what happens with Egypt and Morocco. But I think we can all African teams and all of Africa could be very proud of the contingent we sent this time around and what they did. Every one of them, from South Africa to Congo to Ghana, Senegal, they all competed. That Africa deserves 10 slots. In fact, there's no justification, honestly, for Europe to have more slots than Africa. I'm very happy to say that. I know that it might sound like Europeans would always say, but to be honest, if we had to mix up European and African teams in qualifiers, African teams will qualify. If European team had to travel and we had to travel, play 2 legs, but the same number of African teams will qualify, because we have teams like Nigeria, they're not there. Cameroon and Nigeria are probably the strongest teams in Africa that are not at the World Cup.
Be fair.
Good showing, I must say.
Yeah, good showing, but to be fair, on both the Nigeria and Cameroon side, they did not show up when it counted most in the qualifiers. So can't even say that.
True.
You're only as good, like the old saying, you're only as good as your last performance. So on paper, strongest team, sure, but they're not there. So Italy is probably one of the strongest European team not in the World Cup, and they didn't make it. They lost to Bosnia and yeah, so always got to remember that. But yeah, Morocco and Egypt, they face Canada and Argentina respectively. I don't know, what are you expecting from those games?
Canada, because they've been there, they've seen it, and they've got a good chunk of the guys who were there in Qatar, so they know. The last game went to penalties. Even Hakimi missed the penalty, which says that they had to keep their nerves. It was pretty difficult for them, but they cannot afford to underestimate Canada. Just like America, very difficult teams. They've got talent. They've got their fans behind them. And Moroccans travel a lot. That game, to their credit, is not being played in Canada. It might help them a bit. because the Moroccan traveling fans will be there. I remember in Qatar, the time Morocco got to the quarterfinals and semifinals, there were just so many Moroccans walking around in my FIFA uniform. I know how I was waylaid several times, like, we want tickets. I'm sure they didn't know that they were going to get that far, so they didn't have enough tickets. They were just like all over the place. Moroccan fans were flying in from, I heard one time there were like 4 jets, full jets of Moroccan fans. There was like close to 1,000 fans arrived that morning, and they were like looking for tickets. So this time around, I think they would have bought enough tickets. I've seen in the games where there's just how many fans there are, and they have a lot of the Moroccans living in North America and Europe as well. The diaspora will fill up that place and give their guys a good, and they buy the shirts. They'll come out in their colors. They'll be there. Egypt, I think this is a different experience for them because more and more in the past, Egypt always failed to make it to this stage. So this is Mo Salah's last hurrah. They're gonna try and it will be him against Messi.
That's
A chance for him to show that he can be. Yeah, a chance for him to lead the guys and show that they deserve to be there. Argentina is difficult, but I hope Egypt can find the same mentality they showed in the last game. In the late time of it, they can keep Messi and his guys at bay early enough, then they have a chance. I'm just looking forward to both games and hoping that for the sake of Africa, they both advance.
Yeah,
Somebody needs to shock
obviously.
Argentina.
I hope. Yeah, I do.
An African country has done it before, Cameroon.
Yes, let's see it. I would like. Well, honestly, frankly, I think if Argentina should go through, and honestly, based on what I've been seeing, and maybe it's still too early to tell, but I am thinking that we might be in store for another France and Argentina final. Again, it's still a bit early to call, but just the way things have been going, because France especially, man, I don't know, they just seem untouchable right now. France have just seemed absolutely untouchable. Argentina, they have not always been comfortable, but they still make it through each time. So at least I am convinced France is making it to the final at least. Argentina, maybe. I don't know.
Well, I thought about this after watching the last France game, and then I was hoping, let me see what Argentina does. I think that, everything points to another Argentina-France finals, but there might still be a surprise in store for us because this is round of 16. They still have to face teams in the quarterfinals and semifinals. And to their I don't know what to call it, their advantage, certain teams are out of the picture. Germany is not there. Netherlands are out. I don't know who else. There's England, and there is still. England have not been convincing, but they showed character in the game against DRC, and they've shown in a few games as well that when the chips are down, they can count on Harry Kane or they can bring him into play. And he's one of the scoring leaders in Europe. So that England team has a lot of youngsters, has tenacity in abundance. This World Cup is 60 years from the last time they won. Yeah. And with the World Cup and with football, sometimes there's some magical things that happen sometimes with numbers and with coincidences and omens and whatever. I wouldn't go as far as looking at the final. I think we have to look at what happens in the round of 16. And then after that, we'll see who's left. I know the path for both teams. We've seen Argentina being shaken.
Yes. And again, Cape Verde, almost. Very close. Very almost.
Can I say Egypt will beat them? I don't know. Everyone expects Argentina finals. We've had this moment before in the past where it was in 82 and 86, it was Argentina and Germany. 78, okay, let's go back. Germany won the World Cup in 74, Argentina won it in 78. And in 82, Italy beat Argentina along the way. Germany got to the finals and they lost to Italy. In 86, it was Argentina versus Germany in the finals, and Argentina won. And then by 90, both of them again in the finals. They were led by Maradona. So this is almost like the Maradona circumstance. When Argentina won in 78, Maradona was like 16. He was already so explosive. Everyone wanted him to go, but Menotti, who was the coach, said no. And Maradona threatened he'll never play for them again. But then the next year in 79, he led the Argentinians to win the FIFA Under-20 World Cup in its second edition. And then by 82, he was there with all the big stars from 78, but he was still like the best player in the team. but he got sent off in that World Cup. When they appointed the new coach, Carlos Bilardo, going to 86, he dropped all of the big stars and left only the captain, Pasarella. And they built a team around Maradona. And that team carried on. And maybe if he wasn't disgraced out of the 94 World Cup, maybe they might have got into another finals. So this Messi movement is very similar to Argentina. If nobody stops them, they get to another finals. And when you look at it, he has already been to the finals in 2014. In 2018, they crashed out. And they were beaten by France. So over 2018, 2022. 2022 was insane because it was the first time that two players, Mbappe scored a hat-trick in that finals. And these teams got so close. It was a very tricky game. France would have won it in the end. I was working for FIFA, so I was half watching the game and half at work. But what I remembered most was going out and stepping out, and I think I missed the first goal. I went down to the media center and I came back up the escalator, and there was so much noise. And then the game carried on, and France got back into the game, and they went to extra time. Still remember Colomwani could have won that game. And he came on, he was part of the reason why they didn't got, but then he had a chance with one-on-one with the keeper and could have scored. And it just seemed like everything was prime. Messi was destined to win that World Cup. Because if Colomwani put that away, that was France with the trophy, This is looking like one of those things that are written in the stars for both teams. We'll see. We'll never know.
Yeah. And sticking to the topic of France, you mentioned Zidane earlier. I saw a bit of a conversation happening on Instagram the other day, so I have to ask you, Zidane or Mbappe?
Zidane was like Zidane. When people talk about the greatest players in world football, they always look to. Some people point to Messi, people point to Maradona, those who point to Pele. And for me, Pele will always be the greatest player for me. But you know what? There are two players who I think are special players. One for how they approach the game and how they play the game. And these are Johan Cruyff and Zidane. They're like, they're like Mozart, Beethoven. That's how I view them. I view them like the classical artists. They embody the beauty of the game. That's guile, the flair. Pele had it in abundance. He had a supporting cast that was just as good. He had people like Garencha, he had Jairzinho, he had Bellini, he had. In fact, I'll add a third player to that cast of the classical players, and that will be Jesse, the midfielder for Brazil in 70. Sorry, in 70. I think he was also there in 68, 66. But then perhaps even Wim Hannigan from who was Cruyff's teammate in 74 Dutch team. But Johan Cruyff and Zidane, and to an extent Jesse, embody that spirit that you find where it's almost like they're dancing. It's almost like the combination of classical music and ballet. Is a goal scorer. The goals that he scored for France. There's a French striker called Just Fontaine who was top scorer in 1958 World Cup with 13 goals. I never thought anyone would score more. And then, of course, when you start talking about greatest French players, there's also Michel Platini, who is in that conversation. I think Platini for me, much more skillful, a midfielder for the goals that he scored. He led France to their first ever major title in '84. So that conversation doesn't. I think everyone focuses on Mbappe and Zidane, but you got to look at players like Ramon Kopa from the French team, who was also another big star player from the 50s. And just down to Zidane and Mbappe, I'll go with Zidane. But Kylian Mbappe is going to go down as probably the greatest goal scorer. Yes, Messi is on 20 goals, but Mbappe is younger. So unless Messi proves that he's an alien and comes back to the next World Cup,
keeps coming back.
A game will be played. Because in this World Cup, he's playing like. He's not playing like a 39-year-old. He's very involved in the game. He's running like Messi. He's scoring like Messi. Messi looks like he's 20. Just the way he plays the game. I won't be surprised if Messi decides that, okay, look, this World Cup is going to be in Argentina in 2030. I might just be a bench player and still come on. But he doesn't look like someone who's. I've said it already before that. There could be motivation for him to come back. Even Cristiano might not be playing every game, but might just do enough. Staying to Saudi, they pay him a lot of money in Saudi. He can spend another 4 years just enough for him to finish his career playing for Portugal in the World Cup on home soil. So you never know. But in talking about Cristiano, he scored in the knockout stage game for once, and yeah, he was sad when they took him out. But
Yeah. So let's look. Let's conclude this with a proper prediction. Round of 16 kicking off tonight, as at the time of recording. What game are you looking forward to the most? And who do you think when we come back here? Who do you think we're going to be talking about? Like really talking about, besides the obvious ones, I guess, assuming they make it through again.
so when
But,
so when it gets to this stage, I'm looking forward to every game.
yeah.
Because you're talking about 8 games. So I think I'm looking forward to the African teams, Morocco and Egypt, more than anything else. Those are the teams I care about. Those are the teams I really want to go far. And I'm hoping I'm hoping that we come back here and they're still in the conversation, because then it's good motivation for everyone in Africa, especially the young players,
Yes.
seeing how far they can go. And then also for the sake of players like Mo Salah, Hakimi, and the rest, to prove that, they can be in conversation with a lot of the world stars. So their teams have to step up to the plate. And for me, I think that's their world. France, we know what they can do. And I think one team that we are overlooking is Brazil.
Yes.
In the last game, we haven't
Brazil
talked
versus
about, in the
Norway.
last game,
That's one. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, that's a game. Haaland, just scoring, and even when he's not playing well, and his entire teammates have been good. Anthony Nusa, who scored in the other game, he's Nigerian as well. So the Nigerian boys in this tournament England had to call in Eberechi Eze and Bukayo Saka. I think that we've had a good representation in terms of DNA and how those guys have performed. But I am looking forward to Brazil, because I want to see what Ancelotti does. In the last game, Brazil would have lost that game in the usual form, but Ancelotti made some very interesting substitutions, and people were expecting to bring on Neymar. He didn't. He brought in Endrick and just switched the entire team. And this is Ancelotti that knows how to play knockout football, and he showed that with Real Madrid several years when he kept winning. So something that I've highlighted before is the fact that no country has ever won the World Cup with a coach that's a national from another country. And in this tournament, we have Brazil and England. Brazil with an Italian coach, Ancelotti, and England with a German coach, Thomas Tuchel. And these are two coaches who have won the Champions League, and they know how to win. So sometimes you win even when you don't play well, or you win when you're struggling. You win when things don't go right. So we might see something like that. So those games involving England and Brazil, watch out for them, and let's see if they go for that, because those are the teams that can disrupt the France, Argentina, written in the stars narrative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Dad. And thank you for joining us here on EEXSport Talk. Once again, if you enjoyed the conversation, leave a like, share the video, subscribe to the channel, and of course, let us know what your round of 16 predictions are in the comments below. I'm Enyadike Jr. This is Emeka Enyadike. We will see you all next
Thank
time.
you. See you.